Just 15 years ago, this city was one of Europe's poorest capitals. But by 2030, it could have more buildings over 150 meters tall than some entire countries. From a tower shaped like Albania's national hero to a 205-meter mountain, these projects are completely changing the city's skyline. Hey, I'm your host Regis, and today we're exploring how this forgotten Balkan capital is becoming Europe's most surprising skyscraper hotspot, and why the mastermind behind this transformation might be destroying everything he set out to protect. You guys have heard me say, hey, I'm your host Regis for, well, probably hundreds of times now. But I want to take a couple of minutes and talk to you not as Regis, the host of MegaBuilds and Good News, but as Regis, the guy. You've known me as the largely exclusive host of MegaBuilds and our other channel, Good News, for about 5.5 years now, which is insane to say. When we first started working together, Lewis, Freddy, and I was recording these videos in my parents' house on a tiny little desk with a microphone that was, well, a lot less nice than this one is, let's put it that way. It's been pretty insane to see how this channel has grown over the years, from this tiny little upstart where we were throwing a bunch of things at the wall and trying to see what would stick, to the awesome channel with a huge team that it is today. Many of you guys might not know this, but for the entirety of the time that I've been the host of both this channel and Good News, I've also worked a full-time job. And I spoke with Lewis and Freddy earlier this year because it's getting really difficult for me to both work that full-time job and host these two channels at the same time. And unfortunately, it came to light that from a financial perspective, it's not really possible for me to host these channels on a full-time basis and leave my other full-time job. So the unfortunate fact and the result of those discussions is that come later this year, I will no longer be the host of MegaBuilds and Good News. Now, please don't hear what I'm not saying. MegaBuilds is not going anywhere. Neither is Good News. Lewis is taking over as the full-time host of MegaBuilds. You guys have already seen him record a couple of videos, and a lot of the feedback has been positive, so thank you to you guys who are giving him a real chance as the new host of this channel. I want to make it very clear that Freddy and Lewis have been involved with these channels at the very core from the start. So while the face might be changing, the channels are not. It's going to be the same great team creating the same great content with a slightly different coat of paint on the outside. I really want to thank all of you guys who have said such nice things about my narration over the last couple of months as you've started to see Freddy and Lewis post videos. It really makes me feel good, and it's been a great honor of my life to be able to do this for so long. It's possible that I will be back in some capacity at some point, but I wouldn't count on that. I would say right now it's more likely than not that when I release my final video in a couple of months, it will be goodbye, at least for now. So let's enjoy this time that we have left together and really try to make the most of these last few videos. I know I'm going to have a great time making them, and I hope you guys have a great time enjoying them as well. Okay, enough sentimentality. Let's get into today's video. This is Tirana, and its transformation is huge. I mean, until 2015, most of the buildings in the city were under 40 meters tall. For centuries before that, it was a small trading town. Even when it became Albania's capital in 1920, we're talking about just 17,000 people. Then came the communist era, and with it, buildings that all pretty much looked like this. Most people lived in prefab concrete apartment blocks, usually around 13 to 20 meters tall. For a while, the tallest building in the entire city was the Tirana International Hotel at just 56 meters tall. Then the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. And Tirana's population exploded from 225,000 to over 600,000 over the next 9 years. But even then, the skyline basically stayed the same, until Edi Rama became prime minister in 2013 and made EU membership Albania's top goal.
For Albania, EU membership is far more than a political or an economic ambition. It is an existential choice of life.
And if Albania was going to convince Europe it belonged in the club, it needed to show that it could compete with other modern cities. EU accession isn't just about political reforms and economic indicators. It's about demonstrating that you're a modern, developed European nation. And while most European cities don't actually have dramatic skylines, Albania needed something bold to signal change. The government started framing every major development project as evidence of Albania's modernization. Rama needed someone with serious vision to make this happen, which is where this guy comes in. He's an Italian architect who designed something pretty unique. Towers in Milan that are literally covered with over 20,000 trees and plants. Think of it like a vertical forest growing up the sides of skyscrapers. In other words, the perfect green credentials for a government that had been facing protests about reckless development. In 2017, Stefano Borri delivered exactly what Rama needed, the Tirana Master Plan 2030. This was a blueprint for transformation that would put Tirana on the map as a major regional player and show off Albania's EU ambitions. And now, Albania's construction sector represents almost 14% of GDP, the highest share in Europe and Central Asia. All of this feeds into Rama's timeline, with the goal of joining the European Union by 2030. So let's take a look at what this boom is actually creating, from the shortest all the way up to the tallest buildings under construction today. And we're starting with one that does something incredibly rare in skyscraper design, the Skanderbeg Building. It's an 85-meter tall building literally designed in the shape of Albania's greatest national hero. The architects started with maximum allowable volume. Basically, they took every bit of space that they were legally allowed to build and then chipped away everything that wasn't Skanderbeg's head. His shoulders line up with the widest part of the site, and his head turns slightly to look at the square that's named after him. All those curves and dents that make up his facial features come from actual balconies that wrap around the whole building. The nose, ears, even his beard, they're all terraces where residents can get outdoor space and views of the city. It's quite something for a country that spent decades under a regime where you couldn't express yourself freely. But not every new building in Tirana is about national heroes. Some architects are trying something completely different. This is Hora Vertikale, which means vertical settlement in ancient Albanian. This 140-meter building is under construction now, and it looks like someone took 13 giant building blocks and just kind of tossed them randomly up into the sky. The tower uses 7 different types of cubes, each built to be about the average height of most buildings in Tirana. So the designers basically took the city's normal scale and stacked it up vertically, going for the organized chaos vibe. And depending on where you're standing in the city, the building looks completely different. The result is a building that actually gets something essential about Tirana. It's a city that's always been a mix of influences. But nearby, Downtown 1 takes this whole idea of national identity in architecture and cranks it up to the next level. It rises 150 meters above central Tirana, and if you look closely, you'll see that the building's entire facade is actually a pixelated map of Albania. Every bump sticking out from the tower represents a specific town or city. So if you live there, you could literally say, I live in the Tirana pixel, or my apartment is in the Durrës pixel. Set to open later in 2025, Downtown 1 is also Albania's tallest building. At least for now. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Because this isn't the only building where developers have tried to pull off a visual spectacle. There's also the Eyes of Tirana. And here, the crown opens like a massive concrete flower in full bloom. Making concrete look weightless like that is pretty dang impressive. Especially when the building is architecturally topped out at 135 meters. It's got some clever structural work with a central core to hold up those flowering upper floors. The building gets its name from these openings that punch through the facade. They're designed to look like eyes watching over Skanderbeg Square below. And there are pedestrian walkways that actually cut right through the structure, running parallel to this street. So instead of being something that people have to walk around, it now becomes part of how they move through the city. But there's another really ambitious project that's been approved, called Papuli Tower, which will have 4 massive concrete silos reaching 190 meters into the sky, except instead of storing grain, they'll be packed with apartments, offices, and shops. Spanish architecture firm RBTA actually works out of converted cement factory silos in Barcelona. So when they got the chance to design something for Tirana, they must have thought, why not just bring that same industrial concept here? The 4 concrete tubes are arranged around a central square core, creating floor plans that look like 4-leaf clovers from above. And that core is where you get all of the elevators and utilities, so the curved walls have more space to give each apartment panoramic views. You gotta admit, there's something fitting about this industrial design landing in Tirana. It's a nice nod back to the local craftsmen producing silk, leather, and ceramics in the 16th century. And the same Spanish firm has another surprise in store, but this one is impossible to miss. It's called Barcelona Tower. And it'll twist its way 190 meters into the sky, rotating a full 45 degrees from bottom to top, tapering into an obelisk shape. It's made of red concrete, and you can see from the renders that it'll definitely stand out against Tirana's skyline. Why the twist? Well, it's actually some pretty clever engineering. The aerodynamic shape makes the building less susceptible to high winds. It's gonna overlook Skanderbeg Square. Yes, another tower gazing down at that same plaza. Red concrete in the heart of Tirana is quite a statement. But the biggest statement of all takes inspiration from something that's been watching over Tirana for thousands of years. It's called Mount Tirana. And at 205 meters, it's gonna become the tallest building in the country when it's finished. The project beat out global firms in an international design competition for the rights to build a new landmark. And we're talking about a competition judged by Albania's prime minister, Tirana's mayor, and some world-renowned architects, which tells you something about how seriously they're taking this transformation. Danish firm Sebra looked at the mountains surrounding Albania's capital and asked, what if we could bring that natural beauty right into the city? And it's got a pretty important role to play. Tirana is becoming a key hub for innovation, technology, and finance. The government has turned the Tirana Pyramid, once a symbol of dictatorship, into a major technology center. Now, the idea is that Mount Tirana will become kind of like a bridge between the city's rapidly changing face and its unchanging natural surroundings. The architects describe it as the queen on a chessboard. It stands out, but somehow still belongs, with plants covering the building's slopes. It's being built in the center of the city, and at street level, cafes, shops, and public spaces spill out into the surrounding park. But this scale of transportation comes with consequences that are getting harder and harder to ignore. So let's talk about the price of ambition. Because all those towers only tell one side of Tirana's story. In recent years, 36 cultural monuments have lost their protected status in the capital, with 17 already demolished to make room for new construction. And critics say that historic landmarks like the Ethem Bey Mosque now get dwarfed by some of these buildings that have no real connection to their surroundings. You can kind of see where they're coming from when high-rise buildings pop up seemingly at random with mixed styles, materials, and heights. Then there's the fact that these developments typically prioritize luxury apartments and commercial spaces for the wealthy. Throughout the city, rising property values have pushed lower-income residents towards less desirable areas, disrupting local communities. Property prices have jumped 56% in 6 months. And Tirana now ranks among Europe's least affordable cities relative to local incomes. There are also environmental concerns, because a lot of the projects rely on construction methods that require huge energy consumption. The removal of trees and green spaces for development has contributed to urban heat island effects. In fact, the city now offers less than 1 square meter of open green space per person, well below European standards. For an idea of just how bad it is, the World Health Organization recommends at least 9 square meters of green space per person. In other words, it's about 90% less than the recommended level. So much for that green metropolitan area vision. And then there's the guy who started it all. Stefano Borri was introduced to Albania as an architectural star who would guarantee sustainable development for the capital. But citizens groups have documented how his own projects consistently exceeded the planning guidelines he created. The Tirana 2030 plan promised ecological architecture, cultural heritage preservation, and transparency. But a World Bank report eventually exposed the green promises, revealing that Tirana has actually lost green space over 7 years rather than gaining it. So, what's next? Well, other cities are dealing with similar challenges. How do you modernize without destroying what made you special? They'll all be watching and taking notes. Whether the Tirana experiment succeeds or not might determine how they approach their own transformations in the years ahead. But what do you think about Tirana's transformation? Are we watching a bold experiment in modern urban development, or a city losing its soul in the pursuit of progress? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.